the Ambazonia, pledge our loyalty. Praise to our Savior who granted us the freedom. Allegiance to the hero who fought along the gather.
Glory will rise and never to fall. Hearing a nation flowing with milk and honey. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation, a joy forevermore. Amazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our needs. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this nation. Amazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our needs. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this nation.
It's Monday, the 4th of May, and we have George Narlulis with us. George, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm glad you asked the question.
Okay. Jim Peters, how are you, Jim?
Good morning. I'm good.
Okay. And we have as our guest, Prue Kembang. Prue, you doing okay?
Doing very well. I thank God. Good morning.
So this day in history, I thought it was interesting that 1471, this is the anniversary of the Battle of Tewkesbury. Not our Tewkesbury, the one in England. Well, that's not good. Well, speaking of invasions, Saturday's count was coronavirus, 1,819 cases in Lowell, and 66,000 and a little bit statewide. So it's still going. We've unfortunately, we currently have 91 in the hospital. And of course, as we know, even when it peaks, that won't mean the end of cases. It just means it'll start to trail off. So the governor's stay-home order is through Monday, the 18th of May. And we have an order for wearing masks when you're out in public, so trying to remember to wear a mask. I listened to the city manager, Eileen, talk up on the website. If you just type in Lowell masks coronavirus, it'll come up. And she said, don't wear an N95 mask, that's for hospital people. The other thing that I saw about the Wuhan virus is that apparently the U.S. outsourced virus research to the Wuhan lab, and the U.S. government funded $3.7 million project. Dr. Anthony Fauci made that happen.
Well, didn't Fauci say we're going to have a pandemic a year ago?
I don't know. I didn't see that.
Okay.
Did you see it? That sounds insightful on his part.
It was a Facebook extravaganza. I don't know if there's any truth to it, but there was a whiff of that he knew. There's also a whiff out there that we paid to develop this virus.
Yeah. $3.7 million.
So we paid to get this virus developed, and China said it's a natural virus. So I don't know what to say, Cliff.
But then we believe this, a lot of good people and doctors and specialists. How did they come about saying that it started from bats? Are they deceiving the whole world, or who made that conclusion that it started from bats?
Oh, I'll show show you. I know who made it. This guy. He said it. He did. That's who did it.
So do we believe anything they say, or they're just deceiving us and hiding the truth?
Well, you know, you can go down to the courthouse when it opens, and you can ask the judge, "Excuse me, Your Honor, you've been a judge for a long time. How many people have gone to jail for lying?" And he'll say, "What do you mean by that? You know, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Your Honor, and you lie your pants off." Has anybody ever gone to jail for lying to the court?
We're going to discuss that later in the agenda.
No, they haven't. Go ahead, Cliff. Sorry.
So, Fru, in Ambazonia, you've got the Ambazonian flag up there behind you. What's the Swiss initiative to end the conflict in Cameroon?
Well, that's very important, Cliff. We heard that there's an NGO that has a track record of peaceful negotiation for troubled places around the world.
Fru, for those that aren't familiar, NGO stands for
Non-governmental organization.
sort of like the Red Cross or something like that.
Yeah. So they are not affiliated, not political or so.
Press on.
Okay. So they came in as an honest broker to bring both parties to start talking. The Ambazonians or the former British Southern Cameroon, now known as the Republic of Ambazonia, and the French Cameroon. But I would like to pick your imagination and wisdom, Cliff, and the panel. They were to finance the Ambazonian delegation to Switzerland. So my question is, in any negotiation, should it start at the top with the leaders, or it should start by lower level secretaries and people or diplomats before it gets that point? Because we've not heard anything from Cameroon, but from the Ambazonian side, they are selling, but their leaders just to the initiative. Could you please explain to us, I know most of you have been diplomats, how those negotiations happen?
So I think Fru's got a good point. Normally when you're negotiating between nations, it's all worked out ahead of time and the leaders show up. Tell me about Paul George's, John.
Well, when Paul George's negotiates any kind of contract, it's always in a secret meeting. Or we call it executive session. But that's my guess.
Yeah, that's the normal way is secret meetings, people meeting on the side, cutting deals. But once in a while it gets down to the big guys themselves getting together and talking. In World War II, that happened at the Yalta and Potsdam conferences. It couldn't be settled until Stalin, Churchill, Roosevelt, later Truman, all sat down and cut a deal. So, though I think Fru's right, the normal way would be for the Francophone and Anglophone people to have gone to Switzerland and met, agreed on what the issues were, and then negotiated what the solutions were. So this is sort of out of the ordinary. This is, although sometimes you need the great men to make the final decisions.
I think also, Cliff, that you have to have a will to make a deal. If you have, you know, right now, it's, from my view, the Cameroonian government is ripping off the Ambazonians because they have oil over there. That's my take on the whole thing. And as long as they can keep ripping that oil off those people, they're never going to be willing to sit down and talk to them. That's just my take.
I think you're right, Don, because there's no intent for that the Cameroon government will be represented at the talks. So another thing which I am also worried about is the Ambazonian delegation would be going there with a weaker hand because they would be financed, lodging and feeding would be paid for by other people. So I could just imagine when the U.S. was negotiating to meet the North Korean leader, would you really believe that the North Koreans or the mediator will be paying for U.S. Participation?
Now, John, you wanted to say something. Then I want to ask George a question.
I want to ask, well, I know the North Koreans are not going to pay for anything. I can't figure out whether that guy's dead or alive, but that's probably down the road in the agenda. Excuse me. Prue, is the Cameroonian government still killing people over there?
David, it is actually getting worse because since the world attention has been focused on this pandemic disease that's killing people everywhere, the Cameroon government is deploying its military into villages. I mean, they have gotten so worse that they are beheading people. There are so many images that happened even just the past week that they are so horrified for me to present them on the air.
Well, respectfully, if you could, next time, if you can bring them, love to have the pictures because that's what President Trump, Elizabeth Warren, and Ed Markey need to see. They need to see pictures of this country, of the Cameroonian government killing their own people. And they'll present those pictures to France and say, hey, you said this was all over with. It continues through today. Pictures is believing, bro. Sorry, but that's the only thing the government was the proof.
Okay, I'll bring the pictures.
Thank you. George.
Yes, sir.
Well, Greece was fighting for its independence in the late 1800s and early 1900s from the Ottoman Turks. How much was negotiation and how much was fighting?
I really don't know. I would say it would be more fighting than negotiation.
I know there was finally a peace treaty in what, 1922 in Luzerne, Switzerland? But it just seemed like there was a lot of fighting.
1932?
1922.
Well, you know what? They're not going to go back there. They're not, there are probably less than 100 people on the planet that were alive then. So, okay, Cliff will correct me. Okay, there's 10,000. Okay, there's 10,000 people on the planet who are 104 that were around for this, and at that point they were only 2 years old. So you're not going to find anybody that can actually witness what actually happened. So what was written down is what's believed, and then we have to say what proof is there.
Well, John, in this particular case, I think there's plenty of proof that the Ottomans have slaughtered the Greeks.
Why do you call them Ottomans? They were the Turks. Period.
Hey, Jimbo, you waving at us, or what are you doing there?
No, I was trying to get my pencil.
At that time, were they not the Ottoman Empire? Were they not an empire?
I don't know what it was. I think it was a bunch of thieves. That's what they were. They came in, and they stole everything they could, and they got rid of the people, and, you know, the Armenians and the Greeks, and they took over those buildings and those statues that were Byzantine and made it tourist attractions of the world today.
George, you know exactly that is what Ambazonia is going through today, because Ambazonia has all the riches, and French Cameroon is looping and raping the whole system and killing people. The Southern Cameroon is actually going through what Greek went through under the Ottoman Empire.
Not quite the same. Not quite the same. Because we had two different eras. One was the enslavement for 400 years, and the other one was the elimination or the genocide of both the Armenians and the Greeks.
Wow.
So, Fro, you mentioned something when we were talking earlier about the United Nations. Who's pushing the United Nations idea? Do you know?
Cliff, thank you very much for bringing that up. I also wanted to break your knowledge and the panel's knowledge that history is made of facts, and facts is what you cannot dispute, and there are records to prove it. In 1961, there were 64 nations at the United Nations, including United States of America, who voted to grant the Southern Cameroon, which was a trust territory under the British, and trust territories were territories that Germany, Italy, and Japan lost after the Second World War, which during that time it was the League of Nations. So when these powers lost the war, their colonial territories were taken over and put under the trust territory, so mandated and governed by the United Nations. So Cameroon, French Cameroon was trust territory to the French, and then Southern Cameroon was a trust territory to the British, like Togo, Tanganyika, which today is Tanzania, and other countries around the world. So in 1961, the United Nations voted 64 members to grant only 10 abstention, and I think 20 did not vote, to grant the Southern Cameroon, as well as they did the same thing with French Cameroon, independence. What, to my understanding, is that the leaders of the Southern Cameroon needed just to apply for a seat at the UN and get their seat at the UN. But on some political maneuver with the French, they did not do that. So my question to the panel is, can the UN again still vote to grant the Southern Cameroon independence when none of these 64 countries has revoked their vote? And today we should be talking about annexation. French Cameroon annexed another independent country. So what do you think?
I think that there is some case there. People argue, of course, that Amazonia went on its own free will, but I think that, that's a point that can be argued. Anybody else have a thought?
I think you're right. I think they have a right to go back and resurrect that what took place in 1961 and kind of put some meat into it or teeth into it and straighten it out so they can stop some of the nonsense that's going on. It's not going to stop unless many of the countries get together and come in there and straighten it out, or help them straighten it out and save those people that are being unjustly crucified.
I support what you're saying, George, very well, because like I mentioned, French Cameroon territory and granted independence to absorb and invade an independent sovereignty of the independent sovereignty of Southern Cameroon. It is an invasion, not really an assimilation. But when you talk of that the Southern Cameroon willfully joined, I don't think that was correct, because if you look at the case of Zambia and the Senegal, Gambia is smaller than Cameroon. It's almost like the half of Southern Cameroon. But Gambia is English-speaking. Senegal is French-speaking. But they had their two independence. Since these two countries had their two independence and had a seat at the UN, I think way back in the 2000s, they came to a union and they formed the Senegambia Republic. But it found that these two systems could not really work together. Then they peacefully went their separate ways and maintained their independent nation. That is what I think should also happen in Cameroon.
That sounds like a good model to follow. Hey, for those of us who don't know much about what's going on, are there any sources of news in English, online or in print, on the air that you could follow?
Cliff, that is a very, very good question. But I would assure you that we have an elephant in the room, and also that the current government of Cameroon has very, very deep pockets, and they have hired lobbies around the world to actually buy the international media, because and also the elephant in the room is France, and France, being a member of the Security Council, has that power to also influence this world media not to be able to publicize this and bring those atrocities, those images to the world attention that can evoke sympathy. And would you believe that on Valentine's Day last year, this year, when people were celebrating for love, the spirit of love, unity, and peace around the world, the government of Cameroon went to the villages and massacred 35 villagers with kids ranging from 6 months to 12 years, and two pregnant women, and burned them. So that in itself shows that the atrocity is even getting to the level of inhumanity and almost worse than what happened in Rwanda in 1994. But since these international powers, Cameroon with its deep pockets and France are actually lobbying, and the international media is not covering it, no one will say anything, because the media is looking a different way.
So I'm really pleased to come in here and introduce us to this on occasion, because if it wasn't for you, people in America wouldn't know about Cameroon.
George.
Yes. Fruit, can you explain the flag that's in back of you?
The flag in back of me is the flag of the Republic of Ambazonia. The name Ambazonia comes from the bay of around the Gulf of Guinea. That before the Europeans settled, that area was known as the Bay of Amba's Bay. So from that Amba's Bay came the Republic of Ambazonia. And one thing which I would also explain is for the world to know is, when these two territories, Cameroon, French Cameroon and English Cameroon, were under the trusteeship of the French and the British respectively, English Cameroon was one nation. French Cameroon was a separate nation. But when French Cameroon invaded English Cameroon, they partitioned English Cameroon into two regions, called the Northern region and the Southern region. And this is typical of the colonial mentality of divide and conquer. So today, when you hear of the English the government of French Cameroon, because their own country has 8 zones. So by partitioning the English Cameroon into 2 zones, they assimilate it to become the 9th and the 10th zone of the Republic of Cameroon. So when they go out and call us the northern zone or southern zone, they dilute the independence of southern Cameroon, and also the world is confused and thinking that southern Cameroon is part of French Cameroon. Southern Cameroon has an international border. It has a constitution. It has a flag. It has a different language, English, not French. And the UN affirmed that and confirmed that in 1961 by voting 64 members out of the 100 to grant the independence of Southern Cameroon.
So, true. Because we're going to move on to the Rourke Bridge here in a second, do you have any final thoughts you'd say to anybody from Ambazonia who might be listening to the show on the internet?
Yes, Cliff. Before I get to that point, I want to thank City Life Show because this panel, this illustrious panel that is debating on this. And thank you so very much, John, Cliff, Jim, and Rich, George, because it is only through you that the international community can understand and know the plight of the Southern Cameroon. But I would also like to take this wonderful opportunity given to me and this wonderful platform to call on the unity of all the Ambazonian leaders in the diaspora, and that they should lift to the people on ground zero on what they do, because we are hiding in the diaspora in the comfort and the peace of mostly in this blessed nation that we are. Here am I talking to you, and in the comfort of my office, while people on ground zero, they are dying. They don't even know if they will survive the next day. But so the utterances that come out of us in the diaspora are splitting the people and also causing the lives. So I would like to call on the unity of all Ambazonians around the world. And I would also like to call to caution us not to fall into the trap by using the appellation of Southern Zone and Northern Zone. Because once we start calling ourselves Southern Zone and Northern Zone, we are falling into the trap that the French government has set so that they confuse the international community thinking that we are part of them. So thank you very much. I thank the people of Lowell, and I would not end by saying that Lowell has a sister city with Bamenda. Bamenda is the economic capital of the British Southern Cameroon, now the Republic of Ambazonia. Cliff, John, Jim, George, thank you so very much for this opportunity.
You're welcome, Crew. And thanks for keeping us informed.
Hail this land of glory, we the Ambazonia, pledge our loyalty. Praise to our Savior who granted us the freedom, and legends to the heroes who fought along the gather.
Glory will rise and never to fall. Hearing a nation flowing with milk and honey. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation, a joy forevermore. Amazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our needs. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of